Let's stop sugarcoating it. You're waiting, you're obsessing, you're refreshing your screen, and you're asking yourself, why are they taking so long to reply? Why does someone who said they care vanish into silence? Here's the truth. It's not because you're not enough. It's not because you messed up. It's not even about you. Dismissive avoidants operate from a very old survival mechanism. They learned early on that emotions aren't safe. Connection feels like a trap. Intimacy feels like pressure, and when you message them, when you reach out with honesty or emotion, they freeze, not because they hate you, but because it pokes the part of them they spend their whole life avoiding, emotional responsibility. Let me tell you what they're doing while you're waiting. They're rationalizing, they're overthinking. They're trying to convince themselves that replying will cost them their independence, that your message is a problem to solve, not a connection to build. That emotions mean danger. You can't change them, you can't fix them, and if you keep waiting, hoping, chasing, you'll start abandoning yourself. That's not love, that's self. Neglect dressed in hope. You want truth. Here it is. They delay replies because they're avoiding more than just you. They're avoiding themselves, and you can't compete with someone's internal walls. So here's what you do. You stop waiting for permission to matter. You stop shrinking to fit someone's fear. You choose clarity over chaos. You start replying to yourself, to your own needs, your own peace, because the only person you should never keep waiting is you. Dismissive avoidants delay replies not to hurt you, but to protect themselves emotionally. They are not sitting there trying to punish you with silence. They are not playing some calculated game. What they're doing, often unconsciously, is protecting the only thing they've ever relied on: distance. Emotional distance feels like safety to them. When you send a message, especially one with emotional weight, it triggers discomfort. Not because you've said something wrong, but because vulnerability is threatening to their internal system. They grew up learning that emotions lead to disappointment, pressure, or pain. So now, as adults, their first instinct is to disconnect the moment something feels too real. It's not about whether they like you. It's about how close they feel to something they've been running from all their lives: intimacy. The closer they feel, the more their nervous system tells them to retreat. So they delay, they put off the reply. They say, "I'll answer later," and later never feels safe enough. They aren't avoiding you as a person. They are avoiding the emotional responsibility they fear might come with you. They want connection, but on their terms, terms that don't ask them to feel too much or open up too wide. They want warmth, but from behind a wall. When they see your name on the screen, it's not just a text to them. It can feel like a demand, even if it's gentle. A message means attention, emotion, and possible expectation. And expectation is their trigger, because deep down they're terrified they won't measure up, or worse, that they'll get close and lose themselves, so they choose silence. They stole the reply, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Fear of being seen, fear of being asked to feel, fear of needing someone and not knowing how to handle that need. To you, it feels like rejection. To them, it feels like survival. And in that moment, they think pulling away is the safest thing they can do. Even if it means hurting someone they care about, even if it means sabotaging something good, because what matters more to them than closeness is control. So the delay in response, it's not punishment. It's protection, not from you, but from themselves. Their silence is rooted in fear of emotional closeness, not a lack of interest. That quiet you hear isn't indifference. It's fear, not the kind of fear that shouts or runs wild, but the kind that freezes. The kind that silently builds walls instead of bridges. The kind that whispers, "Stay safe, stay in control." Dismissive avoidants aren't cold because they don't care. They're distant because caring deeply terrifies them. They learned somewhere along the way that closeness equals danger, that the more you open up, the more you risk losing yourself, or worse, being hurt by someone you let in too far. So when connection starts to feel too real, too close, too intimate, they shut down. Not because they don't feel something, but because they do, and those feelings threaten the very defense system they've built to survive. They may enjoy your company, they may feel drawn to you, they may even want more. But the moment emotional depth enters the room, their instincts tell them to withdraw. They begin to analyze, overthink, search for flaws, delay contact, because it's safer to pull back than to lean in. It's safer to seem uninterested than to admit they're scared. Their silence becomes a mask, a shield, a way to avoid vulnerability without having to explain what they're truly feeling, because explaining requires honesty. And honesty opens doors they've kept shut for years. So while you sit there wondering if they care, they're wondering how not to drown in feelings they don't know how to process. You interpret the quiet as rejection. They experience it as self-protection. Two people, two realities, one painful misunderstanding. The truth is, they often care more than they're willing to admit. But to show that care would mean surrendering control. It would mean being seen. It would mean risking being known fully, and for someone who's been taught that emotions are unsafe, that risk feels unbearable, so they choose silence, not because they don't want you, but because they don't know how to want someone and feel emotionally safe at the same time. It's not about you doing something wrong. It's about their internal wiring telling them that closeness equals danger. Their silence doesn't reflect a lack of interest. It reflects a deep, unresolved fear of intimacy, a fear that says, if you get too close, I'll lose myself. Or worse, you'll see parts of me I don't know how to face. So they step back. They go quiet, not to push you away, but to protect the parts of themselves that still don't know how to feel safe in love. They associate intimacy with loss of control or vulnerability. To you, intimacy might feel like connection, safety, and closeness. To them, it feels like exposure. It feels like handing over the steering wheel of their emotional world, and that terrifies them. Control is everything to a dismissive avoidant. It's their anchor, their way of feeling stable in a world that once felt unpredictable or unsafe. They've learned that the only way to stay safe is to stay self-contained, to rely on no one, to reveal nothing. So when intimacy starts to grow, when emotional closeness begins to form, they don't see comfort. They see threat. They see their boundaries starting to blur. They feel their grip loosening on a life built on independence and emotional distance. Vulnerability isn't just uncomfortable for them. It feels dangerous. Like a crack in their armor, like an invitation for someone to come too close and hurt them. They've spent years, sometimes a lifetime, avoiding that feeling. So when they start to care, when someone starts to matter, it triggers a deep internal alarm. They may pull away without warning. They may shut down communication. They may become cold, distant, or defensive. Not because you did something wrong, but because intimacy threatens their sense of control. To open up, to share, to express feelings, those are not natural movements for them. They have to fight themselves to even consider it, because being emotionally open feels like handing someone the very tool that could break them. And so they stay guarded. They keep their emotions locked up behind layers of logic, distraction, and avoidance. They may even convince themselves they don't need closeness at all, but it's not true. They do want connection. They just want it without the fear, the pressure, the emotional exposure. They want it in a way that doesn't make them feel like they're losing control. So they keep people at a distance. Not because they don't care, but because they fear what caring too much will cost them. They fear being dependent. They fear being rejected. They fear being seen too clearly. In their mind, control is safety. Intimacy is surrender, and surrender feels like giving someone power over their emotions. That's not something they're ready for, not without deep inner work. So when you try to get close and they pull away, remember it's not always a lack of love. Sometimes it's the fear of losing control and the vulnerability they never learned how to hold. Every message you send is unconsciously perceived as pressure, even the kindest text, even the lightest check-in. Even the simple "how are you" can land like a demand, not because you're being too much, but because they're carrying too much inside that they haven't processed. To someone who fears emotional closeness, every message feels like a door slowly opening toward intimacy. And that door for them is dangerous, because behind it lies responsibility, vulnerability, and connection. All things they've been taught to manage by avoiding, not embracing. So when they see your message, they might freeze. Not out of disinterest, but because their brain interprets it as a call to feel something they've worked hard to avoid, a call to engage, to respond, to show up emotionally, and showing up emotionally makes them feel exposed. They might think, what does this person need from me? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I open the door and can't handle what comes next? Even if your message is neutral or kind, their nervous system reads it like pressure. Not because you're pressuring them, but because their emotional world turns even softness into stress. They begin to associate your presence with expectation, and when expectation builds, so does resistance. They don't want to be rude, they don't want to disappoint you, but more than anything, they don't want to feel trapped in an emotional exchange they don't know how to manage, so they wait, they delay the reply. They avoid opening the message at all, because to reply means to engage, and to engage means to be emotionally present. And for them, emotional presence feels like losing control. Even silence can feel safer than answering. Because if they answer once, they fear it invites more questions, more depth, more intimacy. They crave connection, but only in doses they can control. And every time they get a message, that control feels like it's slipping. So their instinct is to retreat to protect their space, their mind, their emotional shield. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just brushing up against the limits of what they can emotionally tolerate. Your message, meant as care or closeness, becomes a trigger they never asked for but can't avoid, and their way of coping is silence, not to hurt you, but to calm the rising anxiety inside themselves. Because every message feels like a request they're scared they can't fulfill, not in the way you deserve and not in the way they secretly wish they could. They intellectualize emotions instead of feeling them. They don't dive into feelings, they dissect them. They analyze, interpret, and compartmentalize, because that's what feels safe. Feeling is messy. Feeling is unpredictable. And for someone wired to avoid vulnerability, unpredictability is terrifying. So instead of letting an emotion move through them, they move around it. They turn it into a thought, a concept, a theory. They say things like, I understand why this happened. But they rarely say, I'm hurting. They know what they feel, but they don't feel what they feel. This is how they survive. They keep their heart behind a firewall of logic. They may talk about the past without ever touching the pain. They may discuss relationships like puzzles, but never sit in the rawness of connection. Because that would require surrender, and surrender has never felt safe to them. When conflict arises, they retreat into their head, they explain, they justify, they offer rational reasons instead of emotional truth. Not because they're cold, but because emotion to them is overwhelming, too heavy, too close, too dangerous. They weren't taught how to feel, they were taught how to cope, how to detach, how to stay in control. And that control comes from keeping everything emotional at a distance. So even when they care deeply, they struggle to express it. They may show up with actions, but not with words, or with words, but not with vulnerability. They filter their heart through logic, trying to manage feelings by thinking harder. This is why you might feel unseen, why you might feel like you're speaking a different language, because while you're trying to connect through emotion, they're translating everything into thought. They don't say, I miss you. They say, I've been busy. They don't say, that hurt me. They say, it wasn't a big deal. And the worst part, they often don't even know they're doing it. It's automatic. It's survival. It's the only way they've ever known how to stay safe inside themselves. So they stay up in their head because the heart is still too loud, too raw, too unmanageable. They believe if they can understand an emotion, they can avoid feeling it. But feelings aren't meant to be controlled. They're meant to be lived, and until they feel safe enough to feel, they'll keep intellectualizing love, instead of letting themselves receive it. You are not responsible for fixing their emotional avoidance. It's not your job to rescue someone from patterns they refuse to face. It's not your role to walk on eggshells, hoping you'll be soft enough, calm enough, patient enough to make them feel safe. You are not their therapist. You are not their emotional training ground. You are a person with your own heart, your own needs, your own boundaries. Their fear of intimacy didn't start with you, and it won't end with you trying to love them hard enough. You can hold space, but you cannot carry them through the healing they won't choose. You can offer kindness, but you cannot force them to open a door they keep locking from the inside. No matter how pure your intentions are, you cannot do the work for them, because emotional avoidance is a self-protection strategy they've used for years. It's a shield they built before they even met you, and while you might hope your love could make them feel safe, safety isn't created by someone else doing all the emotional labor. It's created when a person chooses to face themselves, to sit in their discomfort, to grow through it, not hide from it. If they shut down when you get close, if they pull away when you ask for more, if they avoid emotional conversations and disappear into silence, that's not something you can fix by shrinking yourself. That's not something you should take personally, and it's not something that will heal just because you're willing to wait forever. You are not responsible for how someone chooses to manage or avoid their emotions. You can love someone deeply and still be hurt by their inability to meet you emotionally. You can understand their past without letting it excuse their present behavior. Compassion should never cost you your peace. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to need emotional presence. You are allowed to say, this isn't enough, even if they're doing the best they can, because sometimes someone's best isn't compatible with your needs, and that doesn't make them a villain, but it also doesn't make you the solution. Healing is a choice. Growth is a commitment, and emotional availability can't be forced. You can inspire it, but you can't create it for them. So let go of the weight that was never yours to carry. Stop thinking if you just do more, love more, understand more, they'll finally change. Because if they're not choosing to show up fully, honestly, emotionally, then what you're trying to build isn't a relationship. It's a rescue mission, and you deserve more than that. So here's the truth you need to hear. You can't heal someone by abandoning yourself. You can't wait forever for someone to meet you where you already stand, and real love isn't meant to be one-sided effort wrapped in silence and hope. You deserve someone who doesn't make you question your worth, someone who replies, who shows up, who leans in instead of pulling away. You deserve presence, not pressure, clarity, not confusion, mutual effort, not emotional breadcrumbs. Let them do their work if they choose to, but you move forward, you choose peace, and you never again forget that your healing, your heart, and your happiness are your responsibility, not theirs.